Hello, everybody. It's Connor with IBPF. It's wonderful to see everyone again. Welcome to our webinar. We are honored to have Sheri Johnson as our presenter. She is a distinguished professor of psychology and Chancellor's professor at the University of California Berkeley, where she runs the Cal Mania program. She is co-author and co-editor of 6 books, including Bipolar Disorder for the Newly Diagnosed and 275 other manuscripts. Sheri is a fellow of the American Association of Advanced Science and Association for Behavioral Medicine Research and the Association of Psychological Science and the Center for Advanced Study in Behavioral Sciences. We'll be wrapping up today's session with a Q&A, but before we begin the presentation, I'm going to ask a few questions and Sheri's going to respond. All right, are you ready, Sheri?
I'm ready. Thanks for that lovely introduction. How could I not be ready?
All right, so how do conflicts with family, friends, and parental criticism contribute to the onset of manic symptoms?
Yeah, so backing up, we recently completed a review of the dozens of studies that are out there tracing over time what are the predictors of changes in mania for people who have bipolar disorder. And I think today we want to highlight a couple of those to give people a little bit more of a sense of what are some of the periods where they should be keeping an eye on things and monitoring and looking for possible changes. Um, and one of the things that pops up is that when people are getting more family criticism and having more arguments with their family members, that is a higher risk period. That's something that can seem to be a trigger for people with bipolar disorder. And I want to kind of pause because it's really easy for us to feel like we're blaming family members, and we're not. I don't know a family in the universe that doesn't have conflicts or things they want to change about each other. And so I think it's natural, it's healthy, it's normative to have things that families have to work through. What we need to think about, though, is that the genes for bipolar disorder can make it just that much harder to kind of re-regulate when things get kind of hyper agitated or aroused. So the name of our program is Calm for a very good reason, because we think that for people with bipolar disorder, things that kind of help kind of keep a sense of calm are really, really vital. And family conflict and family distress is one of those things that can be upsetting for everybody. So what do you do with that? Luckily, there are solutions. David Miklowitz has lovely work on family therapy and even self-help manuals for people living with bipolar disorder and their families about how do you keep open channels of communication for things that need to get solved, but keep the conversation a little chill. Keep the conversation a little bit calm, a little bit positive, a little bit focused on, look, I want this because I want our family to be close and good. So trying to hold that frame because when things are agitating, they may just get under the skin a little bit more for people with bipolar disorder.
So what are, some of those tips or what are some things that family members can say to someone who's upset or becoming up and up and up to help
Yeah,
them
yeah.
calm down?
Yeah, absolutely. And to be clear, listen, if my partner's upset with me, I feel it. We all do, and that's actually a good thing, right? It means I count on this person. And I want things to go well. And of course, it's distressing when they're not going well. So what do you do? One simple tip is you don't have to, Rome wasn't built in a day. You don't have to solve everything in the moment. So if things are getting heated, it's okay to take a break. People feel like that's, giving up. No, it's not. Everybody should have a rule that it's okay to go take a walk around the block, take a couple deep breaths with a promise to come back to this when both parties feel calm enough to kind of keep it a little more relaxed in that dialogue. Another kind of good rule of thumb is don't try and tackle everything at once. Look, on a good day, you're going to make gains on one issue. Keep it to one issue in a day. It's really easy when somebody starts criticizing you to be like, you want to hear about the things you do wrong? That's not going to get you anywhere. There's a phrase for that called kitchen sinking, where like, okay, we're going to pile it on, right?
Yeah.
Never works. It never moves towards resolution. So think about one thing to resolve in a given day. And then the other thing is, don't be hopeless. Like if I'm coming to a partner or a family member and I want to make things better in an area that's not going well, keep a solution focus, right? Like, what are possible ways we could work together on this? What are things that might make it go easier for me? Come to the room as much as you can with an idea of like, how would this look better? And kind of collectively imagining a situation where it seems good and seems positive. So I think those would be three rules that I would think about. Take a breather, one issue at a time, and try and imagine this, going well and going better, working towards growth instead of just the easy path that we all take of kind of like, this is under my skin, this is irritating me. No, it's irritating you because you want it to be better. So give a sense of how you want it to be better. What could go right? So, does that make sense?
Yeah, that's some great advice, Jerry, based on your research, and it's very helpful for our audience members. So
I
the
hope
next
so.
question I'm very interested in hearing about is how does childhood trauma affect the likelihood of experiencing mania later in life?
Yeah. So, trauma is all too common. And by trauma, what I mean are things like, physical abuse, even verbal abuse, like somebody really making cutting, undermining comments, not taking care of basic needs of a kid, sexual abuse. And abuse is way too common in our society at this point. It's not entirely clear why it is, but it's very common. And up to half of people with bipolar disorder will report that they have this in their history. Abuse is kind of bad for every mental health issue under the sun. Doesn't make any mental health issue easier as people grow up. It leaves people feeling vulnerable. And when reminders of that abuse happen, it can be really distressing. It can interfere with sleep. It can leave people feeling agitated. It can leave them feeling like they need to retreat. That's really bad news for bipolar depression, being more likely when people hit those reminders. Um, but there's now a couple studies that say it also increases the risk that people are going to move towards manic types of symptoms when they hit reminders. Why is that? I think it's one of those things where it can be very agitating. It can also interfere with somebody's sleep. Sometimes when you're faced with a reminder of trauma, it runs through the head enough that your sleep is fitful. It's harder to fall asleep. It's sort of in your head, right? Um, so that kind of influence can increase the risk of manic symptoms coming on for people when they're in the middle of a reminder. That's hard because no one chooses to walk into a room and get hit in the face with a reminder of something that was horrible and hard in their life, right? You don't get to decide. So what do? Well, you want to have some good strategies in your pocket for kind of putting it away. Either something you say to yourself about, okay, that was then, this is now, or something you can really immerse yourself in that's going to feel like it gives you back a sense of calm and equilibrium, like long hikes in nature, deep breathing, meditation, things that for many people it's going to be important to absorb. Um, it's got to be absorbing, right? If I'm bound up in kind of remembering something that was really, really painful, it's going to take a lot to find something that's soothing. So don't think like, oh, I can just listen to a nice song and it'll go away. Think about things like, a long hike in a beautiful forest, a big hug from a great friend, deep breathing, things that really bring online parasympathetic nervous system kind of relief very actively.
Great, that's so helpful. And my next question, I think, is what is the role of sleep in predicting manic symptoms?
Yeah, so there is now fascinating work really putting on the map how important sleep is in bipolar disorder. Um, your sleep is guided by a kind of symphony of biological processes that guide your day-night rhythms. That's called your circadian rhythms. One of the things that leads to having really healthy day-night rhythms, your clock genes, which you're born with. And it turns out that people with bipolar disorder sometimes show what are called polymorphisms or vulnerabilities in the clock genes that they're born with that make it easier for their circadian or day-night rhythms to get disrupted. What does that look like? Two profiles that we see pretty commonly, and we see them really even early on in people who are adolescents with bipolar disorder. One is sometimes they're up really late at night. They're running more like owls than other people are, which is okay as long as nobody makes you get up in the morning. But guess what? Society makes us get up in the morning. So you end up with shorter sleep periods. The other thing that happens is there's just not a very strong day-night rhythm. So lots of people with bipolar disorder are kind of up at night, and then feel sluggish by day. It's like, day and night aren't different enough in how active and energized people feel. Well, when you have that, then it's harder to really fall asleep soundly. It's harder to sleep through the night. And we know that sleep is incredibly restorative for people with bipolar disorder. When people start to show insomnia, that's a risk variable for mania. It's kids who have insomnia have a higher chance. If they have parents with bipolar disorder, the kids with insomnia have a higher chance of going on to show mania. Um, and it is probably the only area I can think of in this whole triggers literature where there's experimental data. This is incredible to me, but some Italian guys, some Italian researchers took people who were going through a bipolar depression and kept them up all night. And by the next morning, about 12% of them were starting to show manic symptoms. Not only did they do that study, which I'm still like, who is your ethics board? They repeated that study and they got similar results. So for a lot of people with bipolar disorder, being up all night can trigger the onset of at least some mild manic symptoms. So again, don't let it terrify you. Let's talk about what you do about that. One, then that your sleep is really important. You got to protect it. There are online versions of cognitive behavioral therapy for insomnia that are free. There are free apps for this. There are books for this. But cognitive behavioral therapy for insomnia is basically about protect yourself against all the things that would disrupt your sleep. So number one rule is have a really regular sleep-wake schedule. Don't shift it around because something great is happening till 2 in the morning. If your bedtime is 10:30, your bedtime is 10:30, no ifs, ands, or buts. Really protect that really carefully. But also really protect the power down period. Don't eat late at night because eating is actually digesting is really energetic, and it'll disrupt sleep. Don't take drugs that mess with sleep, like cocaine, too much caffeine, no caffeine after 2 in the afternoon kind of thing. Don't do things that agitate you late at night. Like if you have to have like a really tough family conversation, 8 o'clock at night is not the time to have it. Have it earlier in the day so there's a chance to decompress. So really protect that kind of power down period. And then the other thing about this is that there's certain events that are really hard on sleep. Jet lag. So traveling to a different time zone. Now, I'm not going to tell you don't travel because I love travel and I think everybody should get the chance to travel and see relatives and see amazing places in our world. But there are strategies for adjusting to jet lag. There are strategies for if you do have to adjust your sleep, how to take a medication that helps you readjust your sleep schedule really well. Learn those. If you're going to be a road warrior with bipolar disorder, learn those strategies for, kind of compensating for jet lag. And then, all of this, look, things happen, and I don't want anyone to stress if they're like lying in bed, they meant to go to sleep at 10:30, it's 1 in the morning, right? We've all been there. So what are you going to do? Remember that a lot of the restoration of sleep you can give your body a break. Do deep relaxation, do imagining beautiful scenes. Like for me, I have a favorite scene in nature that I try and imagine and I focus on that. And even if I don't fall asleep, I've given my body some restoration. The other thing is that many doctors will work with you on having a medication you take for just that moment. Like you want to go to sleep at 10:30, you're wide awake. Here's something that will help you fall asleep. It's a little bit of a tranquilizer. You'll drift off to sleep. And a lot of doctors will also work on timing bipolar medications so that the things that are more sedating happen at night, help you go to sleep, sleep through the night instead of making you groggy by day. So all of those kinds of things really important. But I would say that if you're a person with bipolar disorder and you have been up all night, that's a good time to make sure your doctor knows you're going through something and can kind of keep an eye on it, can give you advice, can be available if you're going to need a little bit more support if you're starting to feel a little too go, go, go.
That was an excellent combination of research and helpful tips. My next question is, how do life events related to goal attainment increase the risk of manic symptoms?
All right, this is something I've been working on for decades. And when I started the field, I was going to do a simple study of life events and stress and how they would predict mania. And I started trying to sign people up for my study, and they had to sign a form saying they understood what the study was about. And people started crossing out stress on my form and writing in, you should be studying this. And it turns out they were right. General stress, like, very negative, sad things generally do not trigger mania. It's the things where people get too excited. What we know about the genes for bipolar disorder is that they seem to kind of influence for many people how they regulate dopamine in the brain. I know this is a long-winded story, but I actually think it's pretty fascinating. What does dopamine do? Dopamine helps you get ready when there's the possibility of winning something or getting something great. So when you have a surge in this dopamine reward system, what does it do? It helps. If I said to you, there's $1 million to be had for the first person who can run across half a mile and nab it. $1 million at your beck and call if you win it. What do you have to do? Well, you better be able to run fast. You better be able to focus. You better be able to think quickly because you got to get there first. You better be able to kind of have your kind of ability to talk about things because who knows what you're going to have to explain as you're running down that, street. Dopamine helps you with all of those things, thinking faster, moving faster, keeping your eye on the goal and going for it. It's this kind of rev up engine for the good stuff you're going to go after. Sorry, 1 second. My lights. So, so people with bipolar disorder have less capacity sometimes for bringing dopamine and reward processing back into check. So it's fabulous to have that extra energy in going after something that seems exciting. The problem is bringing it back down into the zone of calm, relaxed, everything's okay. I'm going to put that away for the night, get my sleep, come back to it. So, what can happen when there's something really exciting in life is people get overly revved up, overly immersed in going after it. And over the course of a couple days, they're starting to lose sleep, they're starting to take more risks, they're starting to get more confident, and it just can begin to spiral. So we saw evidence that some of the most exciting things in life could trigger mania, things like graduating from college, getting married, having a first kid. And I didn't publish those findings for a full year or two because I thought, this is horrible. I do not want to be known as Dr. Killjoy. And I don't think we have to be Dr. Killjoy. I think that the trick is when you have something really exciting, know that it's going to be harder to re-regulate. So do it overtly. Take your breaths, program in pauses, keep to your bedtime. Basically, my advice to people is to check your breaks. Can you put a pause on it? Can you keep it from being all immersive, go, go, go-ness? And if not, that's the point to call your doctor and say, okay, wait, I'm going through something really cool. I want to enjoy it, but I'm also too revved. Can you help me keep it in check enough to get me through this period? Um, and I've seen a lot of people do that and do that really well. So the kludgy version of that is I'm not even going to go near exciting things in my life. And you will see people make those decisions. That is the last thing I want for anyone. What I want is go ahead and live your life, have your dreams, but test the brakes when you're in a full tilt moment of going for those dreams. When things are going your way, test your brakes.
That's so helpful. Thank you. My next question is, how can we protect against the social and environmental triggers of mania?
Yeah, so it's tricky, right? Because the social world around us, I mean, that's kind of the meaning of life. You want to be close to family members, you want to be going after your dreams, you want to have the chance to travel. All these things could be happening, right? And the last thing we want is for anyone to live in a closet. So all this could be a depressing message, but I don't think it is. I think one is being super aware of what the potential triggers are. Some of those you can avoid. So, for example, cocaine and too much caffeine are going to interfere with your sleep. You can avoid those things and you can get help if it's hard to avoid drugs, but you can avoid some of these triggers. Some of them, though, you don't want to avoid or you're not going to be able to avoid. So just knowing, okay, this is a period that it might be a little harder to keep my equilibrium, be aware of it. And those may be days to do a little bit more of a symptom check or have somebody else check in and sort of say, let me know if I seem a little edgy. Those may be days to kind of call the doctor and say, hey, I'm going through some things that are a little bit of triggers, and I want to make sure that maybe I get an extra visit in, or, that you're aware that this is happening, like keeping a closer eye on things so that if something does start to emerge, you can you can jump on it. You can get the kind of help you need to get medications earlier because they're going to be more powerful earlier. The other thing we talk about is not just kind of monitoring for if symptoms are coming on, but also life protection if they are coming on. What do I mean by that? If you're starting to feel kind of ramped up, couldn't sleep through the night, having a million ideas of fun things you could do, feeling a little sexier and alive, and a lot of ideas going through your head, that's a very good moment to force yourself to give up your credit cards and your checkbook, to not give podcasts, not give talks, not go on new dates, but instead to kind of put yourself in a zone that's very calming, very low stim, and very low risk. It's not the day to go be in public doing big new things. So life protection as you're going through these kind of things that might disrupt equilibrium, I think is also an important thing to keep in mind.
On that, I had a question. Is there anything your care circle or your support system besides a trusted family can do? Is there ways that they can help you identify the environmental and social triggers?
Absolutely. Very often people who love you and are close to you actually have an eye on your triggers already. So asking, like, hey, what have you noticed when I went through previous manias? Really important. Get their advice, get their wisdom. But the other thing I say is don't wait for the worst moment to try and figure out how they should help you. David Miklowitz calls it the fire drill. Planning ahead. Hey, if you spot me being a little edgy, a little wild, a little go, 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 here's how I would want you to respond. Here's what I would want you to say. Here's some things that might be really helpful or soothing for me. Because in the moment, it's easier for the people around you to be a little panicky, they don't quite know how to say it. They don't know what to say. They may not know your preferred words. They may not know your preferred strategies. Um, and some people, I mean, I think it's really important to look for people who can be calming and really not panicky in that moment. I know a woman who's done extremely well with her bipolar disorder. She's a school board president. She's got a huge community presence, you know, really a powerhouse of using all that energy and, charisma that often comes with bipolar disorder for forces of good. But the minute she starts to get high, the last person who can stay calm is her husband. Her husband cannot add calm to the picture. It's not in his bones. So she sends him away and she brings in her best friend, who is an incredibly calming person, who's also really good at setting limits and saying, no, we are not going dancing tonight. Um, and that friend stays with her till the meds kick in, till she's able to sleep through the night, keeps things a little safer, keeps things super calm and supportive, helps things stay on track.
That was a great antidote. And for my last question is, what types of triggers might predict, I mean, what types of triggers might predict depression, social or environmental?
Yeah, it's so fascinating to me because I think when people hear it's a genetic disorder, which it is, and it's a brain disorder, they often think, okay, so it's just hardwired, but it's not. What's happening is a brain that is just having a harder time re-regulating. So all the things that would make everybody a little more vulnerable to depression can have an influence here in bipolar disorder and just be a little harder to re-regulate, re-get your kind of momentum from. So things like loss, feeling very socially alone, self-critical kind of attitudes towards yourself, beating yourself up, low, all that comes with that. Um, all of those kinds of things that would be depressing for most people are particularly rough for many people with bipolar disorder. Good news there is that psychotherapies are out there to help with those things. Like, if life is feeling empty or isolated, how do you take small steps, 10 minutes at a day, to kind of just try and reconnect a little bit, try and do something that moves you in the direction you're trying to go to? If you're feeling isolated, making one call to find out about support groups in your area, just move it an inch at a time. And if you can commit to like 1 inch at a time each day, it's amazing how powerful that can be in helping on top of medications to kind of get through these really rough times.
Wow, that was great. And now we will open up the floor for questions from our audience. So please type them into the chat.
Don't be shy. I'm very happy to answer a really broad range of questions. And if I don't know the answer, I'm okay to say that, like if it's something that's helpful for you to hear more about, I'll do my best. While people are thinking, I'll just say that, for me, I think one of the hardest things about bipolar disorder is sometimes the unpredictability. It can be easy to feel like I don't know when I'm going to get walloped by this. Everybody talks about the idea that there could be a relapse. For me, I think it's really important to try and give some predictability to that. And I think that's what is happening with these, dozens of studies of trying to figure out what are the things that often can kind of leave somebody at least having a little symptom blip, even on top of meds. It is not the case that the science is covering everything we want it to. And so you may find that there's your own patterns, your own things that are particularly likely to kind of set this off. Um, But I think it's worth kind of go back, try to kind of think a little bit about some of the things that kicked in for you. What we tend to look for are getting really revved up around goals, getting kind of agitated or kind of really aroused, and then sleep. And often one of those things is kind of the final part of whatever, whatever the trigger was. So,
We actually have a question from our audience
all
members.
right.
From an anonymous attendee, when someone is tipping into either a manic or depressive state, what is the best action to take? Are there medications that can be added that can quickly stabilize, or what else can or should be done?
Yeah, I think the first thing is actually considering with your doctor if they can adjust medications, because directly hitting the biology is going to be really, really helpful. And there are often, even if it's not a different medication, medication adjustments or a medication that would help a person get their sleep. So certainly talking to a doctor right away. If it's mania, then I think reducing stimulation. See if you can retreat a little bit from the world, do something that really, really induces serenity. And it wouldn't matter if maybe things were a little scrambled in your head, right? Like if you're quietly in your home, taking care of yourself, the risks are much less than if you're out in the middle of a large scene of people. If it's depression, small things, even 10 minutes worth of things that would either give you some small amount of pleasure or move towards something that feels meaningful, like connection or giving back to the community or volunteering for something you care about. But the trick there is make it feasible. So that's why we kind of say this 10-minute thing of it's easy to think, oh, you know what? I'd feel so much better if I could scrub down my whole house and get it organized and get rid of all this, I need to clean out the fridge. No, 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 no. If you're really feeling down, that's going to be one more morale busting moment of like, wow, that just feels too hard. So look for something that feels really like you can do it, even if it means, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to commit to going outside in the morning and sitting and feeling the sun on my face for 10 minutes. Or I'm going to call an old friend, and you know what? I don't think I have the energy to talk to them. So I'm going to say, hey, would you like to go for a quiet walk? Or would you like to come see a movie? Or would you like to go see a movie? Something that doesn't feel like I have to get all prepared for it. Like just small, small steps to reconnect. Even though you will not feel like reconnecting is going to work or go well, the evidence is that if you get yourself into that moment, it actually will give you a big sense of relief. There is no place worse for you when you're really, really depressed than sitting inside your head doing nothing and feeling more and more disconnected. So if you can force yourself to override that sensation, even for 10 minutes at a time, it will be good.
Great response. All right. So we have one more question, but we're not able to ask that in this format. So if we don't have any more questions from our audience members, I think I'll turn it back over to Sheri for any closing remarks.
Thank you so much. And thank you all for attending. I think what I would like to highlight is just we're still trying to make things better. And the way we're trying to make things better is to do research. So I'd love a moment to just share with you a little bit about the science we're doing to support people with bipolar disorder. You can read more about either of these at our website, which is Calm, Calm.Berkeley, Berkeley.edu. Um, Two studies. One is because we know that medical problems and metabolic problems are really common for people with bipolar disorder and are really troubling for, they can kind of compound outcomes. We're testing healthy lifestyles. And there's plenty of stuff on the web. If all you wanted to do is learn about the Mediterranean diet or eating regular times of day, you could read about it. But what I think we're bringing to this is a lot of coaching and a lot of tips about how do you make it work if you have bipolar disorder. So yeah, you can talk about the Mediterranean diet all you want, but what if you're slugging out in bed feeling like not getting up? Well, have some fruit on hand, have something already made, right? So we do a lot of working with people on how do you make these work if you have bipolar disorder. So that's one, is healthy lifestyles. Um, and the other, we've talked a little bit today about two really important triggers. One is reward dysregulation, kind of getting too ramped up about goals, and the other is circadian disruptions, or kind of not being able to go to sleep. We want to understand what happens when those two problems collide and what you do about it. Because I think the clinical image I have, or the image of a person is, some of my favorite people with bipolar disorder, what happens for them is they can get incredibly hooked on a goal and they are going, going, going. And while the rest of the world gets a giant clue from their body that it's time to power down and go to sleep, if that's broken for the person with bipolar disorder, boom, you've got the tendency to get hooked on a goal, a failure of your body to say power down, and the two make it all that much harder to kind of bring it back and re-regulate. So we're looking at the biology of that, the day-to-day experience of that, um, so that we can really understand it much more precisely so we can jump in and say, here's the measures you need. Here's what we need to do to put a halt to that process to keep people well. So that is our study that we call Rhythm and Rewards, and that'll be launching in about a month. And it doesn't involve any kind of intervention, and it's only for people locally because, well, actually, the big part of it is local. For people who are just interested in tracking this in their daily life, we would welcome you to come join. We do a lot of stuff using a cell phone app there. So, but we're looking for people in the Berkeley area who could take part in a brain scan in the evening. And then we're looking for people in English-speaking countries who might want to do parts of this for a couple weeks on their cell phone. So those are two studies. And I just want to say thank you to every one of you who has supported, one, the science, but two, also organizations like this that are doing so much outreach and advocacy. I think it's just so huge. I'm so grateful to the International Bipolar Foundation for everything they do.
Well, thank you for those kind words, Dr. Johnson. And thank you to our audience for joining us. This webinar will be available in our educational videos section in the next few days. Goodbye, everybody.